July 28th, 2025, at 6:28 in the evening. A 27-year-old man exits a black BMW that he's double parked on Park Avenue between 51st and 52nd Streets. Gets out of his car, walks down the public street carrying a AR-15 in broad daylight on one of the busiest streets in New York City. He walks across the public plaza towards the main entrance of 345 Park Avenue, which is a 44-story office tower that houses the NFL headquarters, Blackstone, which is one of the largest investment firms in the world, and Ruben Management, which is the company that operates the building. The building's surveillance flag him as a potential threat at 6:27, which is 1 minute before the first shot. He walks through the plaza, through the entrance, into the lobby, and he opens fire. By the time it's over, 4 people are dead. The shooter is dead. And the question that will define the investigation, the lawsuit, and maybe the way every office building in America will think about security is this. The camera saw him 60 seconds before he pulled the trigger. Why didn't anything happen? Now, 345 Park Avenue is not a soft target. It's a Class A office tower in Midtown Manhattan. It has surveillance cameras covering entry points and public spaces. It has glass turnstiles requiring badge access to reach the elevator banks. It has an armed off-duty NYPD detective stationed in the lobby. It has access control for individual floors and for tenant suites. Now, this guy walked across the plaza carrying a rifle in plain sight, and the cameras saw him. The system flagged him. And in the 60 seconds between the detection and the first gunshot, nothing happened. There was no alarm. There was no lockdown. No barriers descended. No doors auto-locked. And the first person he encountered was Detective Islam, a 36-year-old off-duty NYPD officer working as armed security in the lobby. And this guy shot him in the back. Detective Islam died during surgery. The shooter then moved toward the elevator bank, where he encountered Alain Etienne, a 46-year-old building security guard. Etienne was killed at his post. And here's the detail that turns a tragedy into a systems failure. Etienne was the only person in the building at the time who could shut down the elevators. When he was killed, the capability died with him, and the elevators kept running. And this guy stepped into the elevator. He intended to go to the NFL offices. He had some sort of a beef with them. He'd suffered some kind of traumatic brain injury in his youth. Subsequently, he'd been suffering from depression. In fact, he had 2 prior psychiatric holds for bipolar disorder, anxiety, and depression. Note that he worked in the surveillance department at a casino in Las Vegas and was lawfully able to carry weapons, not an AR, in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. Anyway, he got in the elevator, but he didn't go to the place that he expected. So the elevator took him to the 33rd floor, which is Ruben Management's office, not the NFL. Didn't seem to matter. On the 33rd floor, he shot and he killed Wesley LaPartner, a senior managing director at Blackstone. He shot and killed Julia Hyman, a 27-year-old Ruben Management employee, and he injured an NFL finance department employee. 4 others sustained injuries while fleeing. Now, when the NYPD's emergency service unit arrived, the shooter turned the gun on himself. Now, the obvious explanation is you cannot stop a determined person with a rifle. A man with a gun and nothing to lose and a really high level of lack of give a damn is the hardest threat to defend against. This was targeted violence, fueled by mental illness, and no security system can guarantee zero risk. But there was not zero warning. The cameras gave them 60 seconds, and that's not a blink. 60 seconds is enough time to lock a door, freeze elevators, trigger an alarm that tells everybody in the lobby to move, floors to stay still. And the building had surveillance, it had armed guards, access control, turnstiles, but none of it was activated when it actually mattered. Not because the systems didn't exist, but because the systems weren't properly connected to a response. Now, here's what a security professional would tell you if they walked through the off through the lobby of 345 Park Avenue before July 28th. They'd say, this building is really well designed to manage foot traffic. It's not designed to stop an armed marauder. Glass turnstiles, badge readers, floor-by-floor access control, all of this is built for one problem: keeping unauthorized people from reaching floors that they shouldn't be on. And the person who tailgates through the lobby, the visitor who wanders past the desk, and the ex-employee whose badge maybe hasn't been properly deactivated yet. That's what these systems stop. They don't stop a man with a rifle. And on July 28th, that became obvious in the worst possible way. When employees fled the lobby during the shooting, they broke through the glass turnstiles. They shattered them. Certainly the shooter could have walked through them. He didn't have to, but he could have. The entire access control layer of the building, the thing that's supposed to be the barrier, was never actually a barrier designed to stop this type of a threat. It's a barrier designed against inconvenience. Low-level threats. And the camera system saw this guy crossing the plaza with a rifle, but there was no automated system connecting the visual detection to a physical response. No, the camera sees the weapon, the doors lock, or the camera sees the weapon, the elevators freeze. There was a camera, and there was a human who had to see the alert, had to interpret the message, the image, had to make a decision and initiate a response. And 60 seconds was not enough time for that chain to complete. Now that gap between detecting a threat and responding to a threat is the gap that killed 4 people. That building had millions of dollars in security infrastructure. World class. Cameras, guards, turnstiles, access controls. But none of it was connected to a response that can happen faster than a man can walk through a lobby. And the elevator, with only one person who could shut them down, not one of several people, but only one person, when he was killed, the shooter had a free ride. A 44-story office tower with one person standing between an active shooter and vertical access to every floor isn't really a security plan. There's more to it. Now, in December 2025, Detective Islam's widow filed a wrongful death lawsuit naming Ruben Management, McLean Security, which is the contract security provider, and the NFL. The claims tell you everything about what went wrong because they read like a list of things that should have been obvious. Insufficient weapon detection. Failure to implement rapid lockdown protocols despite early video detection. Inadequate training and coordination amongst the guards. And the single point of failure is elevator control. Every one of these claims is a design decision that somebody made. The building was designed to manage office workers, not respond to a violent threat. And that decision was made by people who believed quite reasonably for decades that an armed attack at a midtown office tower was unlikely enough that the cost of defending against it wasn't justified. That having been said, there is armed security on site. But July 28th changed that calculation. Well, here's the thing, that calculation hasn't probably changed yet for most buildings. Now, think about the building in which you work, or the building where someone you love works. There's a desk in the lobby. There might be a guard. There's probably a camera. There's likely turnstiles and badge readers. But not one of those things would actually stop somebody who's really determined to get in. They stop you from getting in without your badge, but they don't stop somebody who doesn't care about badges. They stop the inconvenience. They don't stop a violent threat. And the distance between the front door and the elevator is probably 30 seconds, tops. At 345 Park Avenue, the cameras bought them 60 seconds, and it wasn't enough because 60 seconds of watching is not the same as 60 seconds of responding. Now, every commercial tower in America has some version of this gap. Cameras that watch, guards that monitor, turnstiles that manage traffic, and almost none of them have a system that can go from detecting a weapon to locking a door in under a minute. That doesn't mean the systems don't exist. The systems exist. This security system is built for the threat that they plan for. But the threat that they don't plan for is the one that walks right through it. The cameras at this building saw this guy crossing the plaza with a rifle at 6:27 p.m., 60 seconds before the first shot. And 60 seconds might have been enough time to lock down the building had everything been properly connected. But you can't plan for every single threat. You have to think about what threats are actually going to be likely And you have to build response plans, capability plans. You can't protect against everything. But when you have a plan, you have to make sure it's all well connected. See you next time.